Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, a Pittsburgh Steelers podcast made by fans like you, for fans like you. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. I'm your host, Joe Kuzma, and folks, it's been a long time since I've discussed this topic, and since then, we've picked up a lot of new listeners out there. For those of you tuning in, heading into the off season here, thank you, and thank you for supporting Steel City Underground, myself, and everyone else here on Team SCU. But I'm going to have to rehash this for those who may have missed it. It probably got buried somewhere in the off season, probably close to a year ago, believe it or not, since I've last talked about Mike Tomlin. And all of the fire Mike Tomlin, fire this coaching staff, fire Kevin Colbert, fire everybody. Get rid of Ben, trade AB, do all these ridiculous things. It's nonsense. I'm sort of sick of hearing about it. You got the Yinzers out there yinsing and the Jagoffs jagging around as they typically do. They're upset. Rightfully so. Who likes losing? Nobody likes losing. But you know what? There's a lot of teams out there that would love an opportunity to have a winning season, make the playoffs, win a playoff game, win 2 playoff games, make it to the conference championship. Heck, make it to the Super Bowl and win one of those. And you know what? Mike Tomlin's done all of that. It makes me wonder, and I had to go back and look and see how long ago it was since I had an episode like this. It had been quite some time. I didn't get the date because, geez, I'm scrolling forever with my fingers, and I just said, you know what? We're just going to talk about this anyway since it's such a hot-button topic. I can't believe a week removed, and I'm still talking about the AFC Championship game between the Pittsburgh Steelers and New England Patriots. I had some people very critical of me saying that they weren't out-coached. I'm not saying that the coaching job was stellar. They try and make adjustments. It looks like they did at points. I think their game plan got scrapped when Le'Veon Bell was injured, second best receiver on the team. I mean, the guy is a game changer. We saw how that worked all year, right? Having him healthy versus the previous year and versus all the other trips to the playoffs where we didn't have Le'Veon Bell. And I talked about D'Angelo Williams. Now, D'Angelo Williams in his own right is a good running back, but they're two different guys, two different players, and one is one of a kind. You know, D'Angelo's up there. I mean, we're talking about good and great and long careers, right? We'll say, let's say D'Angelo Williams is in the top 10% at his position, skill level. Hypothetically speaking here, I really have not done any analysis, but we're just doing this for just an exercise here. Because Le'Veon Bell would be in the 1% or better. Game-changing player. He's going to command a lot of money from the Steelers or someone else. There's no doubt. And the people he's been compared to and the things he's done. Geez, only Jim Brown had some of the numbers that he had before that game that he had in Buffalo, for example. And you think about that against the top run D, the type of game that Le'Veon had against the Buffalo Bills. What was that, December? And then you think about him not being on the field with the Patriots. And you start to wonder, do people realize the type of things that the Pittsburgh Steelers coaching staff goes through? That's a huge blow to your plans, your game planning, your strategy, and even your execution for that matter. Because I've long said, very long-winded on this, but Bell is the second best receiver on this team. And statistically and otherwise, he's shown that. We all know that this team was prepared. We're already excited. We're talking about next season. We're like, Martavis Bryant's going to be back. Oh, man. And Ladarius Green will be healthy. And, hey, did you think that this front office and coaching staff thought they were going to have these pieces a year ago? I mean, now, I think Bryant was suspended just maybe days following. The news broke, at least, days following Ladarius Green's signing. The Steelers never make much of a splash in free agency. Then Ladarius Green being banged up for most of the year, and we saw what he was capable of doing when he was out there. And I think Jesse James is a fine player, but once again, we're talking about the same difference between a D'Angelo Williams and a Le'Veon Bell. People always tell me, they got to get these backups prepared. The backups have to be, you need better backups. If they were better, they wouldn't be backups. They'd be starting, either for the Steelers or somewhere else, because they would have been drafted higher. They wouldn't have been college or street free agents, of which, and I was looking to see if I actually talked about this on a podcast. I may have. So bear with me, folks. I mean, it is the off season. I'm going to be rehashing some things, but some of our new listeners need to go on this ride too. Let's go down this path of the type of players that the Steelers, we're expecting to have. I said Martavis Bryant, Ladarius Green, Marcus Wheaton. So when you end up with a Kobe Hamilton or, Sammy Coates, I think a lot of people expected him to step up, but a lot of people, hey, look at his season in 2015. The guy didn't get on the field because Martavis Bryant was out there. So I expected him to come in there and be a Bryant, and he was against the Jets, and I think he had maybe another solid outing. And a lot of people were on him because he dropped some passes in the Jets game, but you know what? Then we found out he had broken fingers, and guess what? He disappeared for the entire year. Still don't know how healthy he was up in New England. He was out there. They tried to work Darius Hayward-Bay back in, and Darius Hayward-Bay was hurt for a good portion of the second half of the season as well. You got these guys with all this rust you have to knock off, and that's all the better it is because you don't have anybody else. I'd question if DeMarcus Ayers would have made a difference. He may or may not have. A lot of speculation. Wrote an article about that. Check it out. I think it was over the weekend on SteelCityUnderground.com. Whether he would have made a difference or not. Had some statistics. Moved the chains a few times. Drew a big pass interference call and a deep pass intended for him against the Baltimore Ravens. Tavon Young grabbed him. They moved the ball 35 yards on that. He could have got a play like that against New England. Maybe, maybe not. Patriots are a very disciplined team. And I've always said, and people are saying, well, you just want to say they got outplayed and outcoached. I don't like any of those words. Because that was the Philadelphia Eagles game where you're not moving the ball. You're not doing anything. When you do something, you get penalized. Miami Dolphins game. Baltimore Ravens in Baltimore. So the first Miami Dolphins game, I should say, that was in Miami. All three of those road games, here's another road game where they do move the ball, but they weren't scoring in the red zone. They fumble and give the ball right back to Tom Brady. Within, I think both turnovers gave the Patriots excellent field position and obviously takes the ball away from the Steelers' offense. So when you have two opportunities to score and you don't come away with any points, you have a chance at a touchdown on a drive where Kobe Hamilton drops one and Jesse James ruled short. Those things happen. They kick a field goal instead. Left a lot of points on the field. Game was still close through halftime. Any of you think it was down and out when you went to go visit the restroom or get an extra beer or whatever it is? If you're a smoker, went outside, chatting with your friends. I don't think anyone felt the game was over. We're getting the ball right back. Was it 17-9, I think? Something like that. Could have been 17-13, 17-14, and maybe more. But then you fumble, give the ball to Brady, and you have these huge swings, and the game is out of reach. And, of course, when that type of thing starts to happen, what are your adjustments? Are you going to run the ball with the guy you didn't come to battle with or were expecting to come to battle with? You're going to have to throw the ball and become kind of one-dimensional. That's what teams do when they get down from behind. You have to throw the football. And guys aren't catching passes. Sammy Coates drops one. Antonio Brown even dropped one. I've said all this stuff before. But the whole point of this is you need better backups or you need to prepare better. Well, they try to prepare better. Defense, blah, blah, blah. Well, that was the criticism all year. They finally got Bud Dupree back in there. You saw what happened. They lost Cam Hayward. So they're getting guys. And I thought Latarius Walton, that played way above the line than what I was expecting. I thought the rookie Javon Hargrave played pretty admirably too when they played with just a two-down lineman. Tuitt had a great year. But can you imagine if you have a captain such as Cam Hayward out there? So when you lose these pieces, these chess pieces, you can't always expect to win the battles. But still, a 4-5 start, and Mike Tomlin was able to get an 11-win regular season win the division and get to the AFC Championship game. And, I was pretty much the only person that was, I'm not going to say I was expecting this, but I thought it could be a possibility that they at least not only win the division but make the playoffs. AFC Championship, I don't think anyone was thinking that. I think everyone wanted them fired back then too. So for one loss to the team that's going to the Super Bowl and perhaps could win it, we want our guy fired? I think you need to re-examine exactly what it is you're talking about, because in his 10 seasons, not having a losing season, 100 wins in his first 10 years, more wins than Chuck Noll and or Bill Cowher. There's only so many coaches. I remember John Madden was one of them. I think there was a Redskins coach, name is escaping me, and I believe Tom Landry maybe. And those were the guys that Mike Tomlin is their equal. And currently speaking, there aren't many coaches in the NFL that are on the same level as Mike Tomlin. And people don't want to call him elite. They don't want to understand that he rebuilds this team without having a losing year. 2 500 seasons where they didn't make the playoffs. Okay. So what? Do you think Cleveland Browns fans would maybe accept that? I think 8 wins is 7 better than what they had this year. I always joke with the Browns fans that I know, you can't get any worse. I said that the year before, and they did. Do you want to be worse? I know we all want to be better. We want to be Super Bowl champions. I get it. I understand. But firing Mike Tomlin isn't the wisest decision. You look at what he and his coaching staff have done. You always get this, Bill Cowher inherited this, or Tomlin inherited Cowher's team. Yes, Mike Tomlin did, in fact, enter a great situation when he took the job in Pittsburgh. But lest we forget that Cowher's last season in Pittsburgh, his last season as a head coach, the Steelers did not make the playoffs. I'm trying to remember what their record was at that time. Oh, I think it was also it was 8-8 as well, because there hasn't been a losing season since I think 2003 with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And Cowher's had a few bad years, 5 and 6 win years, and don't even talk about Chuck Noll and some of the bad years that he had too. We have short-term memory with all of that. We forget how many AFC title games that Bill Cowher lost. How many did he win? As many as Mike Tomlin has. Tomlin's been in 3 of them. And he's been to the Super Bowl twice and won 1 Super Bowl, and that's the same thing that Bill Cowher has done. But Bill Cowher had twice as many opportunities because he went to 6 AFC championship games. And who's to say he didn't have a more talented team? And I know somebody's going to be out there and say, well, he had Neil O'Donnell. What if he had a better quarterback? Yeah, what if he had a better quarterback? You know what? He ended up getting that better quarterback. Ben Roethlisberger. So if you're going to give as much success credit to Mike Tomlin for having Big Ben, you may as well do that with Bill Cowher as well, because that's the only Super Bowl he ever won. Oh, that sounds so rough. How can you say that, Joe? I know, I am just stabbing people in the hearts here in Pittsburgh. But it's true. You have to look at this objectively and say, look what Mike Tomlin has done. And this is the piece I was talking about with overlooked players. I think now I have 32 guys that are on this list. And almost all of them, there's a few free agents here that came over to the Steelers via other teams. Arthur Moats is one. Ricardo Matthews. Ricardo from San Diego. Well, now L.A., but the Chargers. Arthur Moats from the Bills. Zach Mettenberger coming off of waivers. Ross Cockrell, the highest pick of this list of 32 players of the 53-man roster. He was taken off of waivers. Cockrell taken off of waivers from the Bills. He was taken in the 4th round. One guy taken in the 5th round is Jesse James. So you look at all these other players. DeMarcus Ayers, 7th round. Jordan Berry, street free agent. Chris Boswell, free agent. Antonio Brown, 6th round. Anthony Chickillo, 6th round. Jordan Dangerfield, free agent, futures contract, practice squad guy. Same with B.J. Finney, L.J. Fort, Ramon Foster, undrafted. Robert Golden, undrafted. Xavier Grimble, journeyman guy. Kobe Hamilton, journeyman guy. Only practice squad players, him and the X-Man. James Harrison, his story has been told so many times over. Cut, 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 cut. Steelers, Ravens, NFL Europe. Guy finally sticks and makes it and becomes a defensive MVP. And that is on Tomlin's watch. He was a backup for Bill Cowher. Tomlin also drafted Lawrence Timmons and Lamar Woodley and got the team back in shape and went to the Super Bowl after he inherited a team that did not make the postseason a year following a Super Bowl victory. Now, he lost his first year to, the Jacksonville Jaguars, wild card or divisional. I don't have it in front of me. But, hey, he won a Super Bowl. He got there in 2008. He got back there in 2010. And maybe a Rashard Mendenhall, fumble or whatever, away from winning that one too. And that's also another great point. In 2008, Santonio Holmes, drafted in Cowher's last year, but he was not an impact player. You look at some of the guys, they go in 10 with Mike Wallace. Mendenhall wasn't around. Marquise Pouncey wasn't there. That's a Mike Tomlin guy too. These rosters change so much from year to year, let alone when you're going to compare between 3 seasons. Almost a completely different football team outside of the first-round picks. All-world players like literally the 3 years in a row there. Troy Polamalu, Ben Roethlisberger, Heath Miller. But you know what? You can't fault Mike Tomlin for that. Cowher wasn't winning with those guys either. He won some, but he wasn't winning Super Bowls. And this is my point to people wanting Tomlin fired for making it to the AFC Championship game. But continuing down this list, I said Jesse James is a 5th rounder. All these guys, 6th, 7th rounders, undrafted. Just guys plucked off the streets. Tyler Matakevich, 7th round. Ricardo Matthews, originally taken by the Colts in the 7th round. Johnny Maxey was on this roster this year. Didn't really do a whole lot. Dan McCullers, Maxey was undrafted, sorry. McCullers, 6th round. Mettenberger from the Titans, 6th round. Brian Mahalik, 7th rounder, originally with the Eagles. Roosevelt Nix, undrafted, originally with the Atlanta Falcons, was signed by the Steelers to be a linebacker and converted to a fullback and is a starter and is an impact guy on special teams. Eli Rogers, college free agent, undrafted. El-Haj Shabazz, undrafted. I know, bear with me here. There's still a makeup of the roster. These guys do something other or not. Shabazz, for being released and everything, and then going to the Texans and coming back, and the guy's bouncing around like a ping pong ball whether or not he had a job. And this guy made 3 special teams plays, I think, against the Dolphins. Fitzgerald Toussaint, running back, undrafted. Alejandro Villanueva, another conversion project, was a defensive end. Played 4 positions in college. Put on weight after cut by the Eagles. Put on weight, converted, starting left tackle. Has not lost the job since he started it. Where do you find these guys? L.T. Walton, I talked about earlier, taken in the 6th round. Greg Warren, the long snapper, one of the few guys that still has a Super Bowl ring on the roster. Love to see him back for one more year. He came in 2005. I hate saying 2005. Doesn't that sound stupid? And the last guy, Vince Williams, drafted in the 6th round. That's pretty impressive when you think about it. Now, do you think that all of this talent is just sitting around waiting for you in rounds, with the exception of Jesse James in the 5th, and they passed on Cockrell? They were looking at him. They didn't take him. I think that's the year they went with Landry Jones and trying to think now. Shamarko Thomas. Oh, yeah, Shamarko's not on here either, but you know what? Shamarko was taken in the 4th. He won't be around. Doesn't matter. 2014. Foggy, sorry. But you get my point. They picked somebody else instead. He ends up on waivers. They end up claiming him. The guy's a starting corner. You're going to say, these guys aren't good enough. What makes them not good enough? Because they were drafted late. They were taken on day 3. You want to say that they don't have talent and they suck? Dare you to say that to Antonio Brown? Or could it be coaching? Are you going to say that all of his, Mike Tomlin, terrible head coach? Well, geez, then you got to give credit to Todd Haley and Keith Butler and all of his other coaches for coaching people up. Wide receivers coach like Richard Mann. Not saying, guys are great. Mitchell, his defensive line coach and his de facto assistant coach. And Joey Porter and Jerry Osavsky and Carnell Lake. All these coaches on this staff. Who are you going to give the credit to? Or are you just going to discredit everyone? I said, you know what? Outcoached. They're not out there catching or dropping passes, fumbling the football, throwing picks, missing tackles. Yards after the catch really killed them. Or not getting to the quarterback, not getting pressure. Geez, Ben got sacked twice this entire postseason. Isn't that incredible? That's Mike Munchak's coaching there. But Mike Munchak has to work within the culture of not only his players, but his coaching staff, and he has to work under Mike Tomlin. A novel concept. And Todd Haley as the offensive coordinator. These guys all got to be on the same page and do a great job. And you need a leader at the top of that. You need the king of the hill. And that guy is Mike Tomlin. His record speaks for itself. A lot of people want to say he inherited this or that. We're well past that. It's 10 years, folks. It's a decade later. And it's over a decade. Actually, it's 11 seasons. Doing my math right here. 05 Super Bowl season with Bill Cowher winning. And then, like I said, that following year, not so hot. And then the era of Mike Tomlin for 10 years. And we got him as a young guy and a young coach. And he's still got the same fire and passion. He's a very professional guy. Kevin Colbert continues to find people together because the coach, they need to tell these guys they need to know what they need. This thing is a well-oiled machine in the Steel City. And I often wonder, and I've mentioned this before too, do you think Denver Broncos fans said, well, Gary Kubiak, he inherited John Fox's team. And the only reason John Fox and Gary Kubiak had any success is because they went and got Peyton Manning. Well, no kidding. You need a great quarterback to have any type of success. There's very few, it's been documented, teams that you could look at the one Baltimore Ravens team, I think, with Trent Dilfer. And they had a great defense. It don't happen too often. And you see all the quarterbacks. Flacco's the only one, I think, in there. They said he was like the moldy onion ring when they showed all the quarterbacks that had played within a time period in the Super Bowl from the AFC. And it's all like Tom Brady, and Flacco has that one, and Ben Roethlisberger, and even the guys that have won, like Eli Manning. That's pretty much the usual suspects there on that chart. And that's not by any type of mistake. Could happen. You could have seen like Alex Smith and the Chiefs maybe make it. Alex Smith, solid, but not Ben Roethlisberger. So, we want to discredit Mike Tomlin because he has a good quarterback, great quarterback. And we all want awesome backups that are capable of being starters. He's done that. That's where they got Villanueva to be a left tackle. BJ Finney filling in here or there. They actually converted Chris Hubbard, who hadn't played tackle in the pros, and just a handful of times in college from what he was saying. They moved him over to back up Marcus Gilbert when needed, and the guy had an outstanding game, and he was so good that they made him the third tight end in these situations. You couldn't even get Xavier Grimble on the field. And, of course, they were using Hubbard because they didn't have Green healthy. That's just a remarkable track record of getting guys to play up. The standard is the standard. So how would you like it? Would you like the mediocrity that the Oakland Raiders had for many years? It looks like they finally found a quarterback. So goes the snake as its head. How do you get rid of it? Cut off the head of the snake. I'd like to see what New England's going to do when they lose Tom Brady. Or, geez, are Packers fans out there rioting because they lost the NFC Championship game. I'm sure they feel pretty entitled. It's Title Town. That's their nickname. And Mike McCarthy, very similar statistics and pedigree as Mike Tomlin. When he stepped in, and then he got Aaron Rodgers, and you know what? He's been to a Super Bowl and won it against us. Do they expect more? Are they ready to chase him out of town? The guy had a receiver in Jordy Nelson that had like broken ribs and had like this special flak jacket made and was still playing. They didn't even have a running back, and they still got as far as they got. These are good coaches. Don't let that fool you. And I'm going to be talking a little bit about similarities between the Falcons and the Steelers coming up in our preview for the Super Bowl, which will be later in the week. I'm going to talk about the Patriots. I still think they have weaknesses that can be exploited. A lot of people think, hey, they exploited everything with the Steelers. You know, you weren't going to necessarily stop the Patriots outright. You just had to score and keep pace with them. And I sound like a broken record talking about this again, but hey, outcoached. If this turned out like that Ravens game and they just couldn't score and they were getting penalized and they were just terribly undisciplined, I might agree with you on that. But this game wasn't like that. Like I said, Ben didn't get sacked. The offense actually moved the ball. They were within striking distance. Not penalized a whole lot. In fact, just pulling it up, Steelers were penalized 3 times for 19 yards. And I think we all feel the one hit with Ryan Shazier, the one where he did not get fined, was borderline not a penalty. I understand why they called it. I've already said my piece on that. The team looked disciplined. They just did not execute. And even Ben threw a little bit of shade at the wide receivers and said some of the young guys, they just weren't ready for the big game. That's not exactly how he said it, but in so many words. And you know what? Those young guys are only going to grow and continue to get better. They're going to do it with this coaching staff, not by dismantling everything. I mean, did you guys see with the Atlanta Falcons in the Super Bowl with all these pieces the Browns got rid of, like Alex Mack, Pro Bowl center, and Taylor Gabriel, and even Kyle Shanahan? They had Kyle Shanahan as an offensive coordinator. Oh, it wasn't working out too well. Let's get rid of him. That guy's going to be a head coach next year in the NFL. So look out for that. But he's coaching a Super Bowl participant right now. Do you really want to just get rid of everybody? I don't think it works like that. I think we're all looking for improvement, but there's not a whole, like I was just saying with the Browns, you can't get much worse, and they ended up. Well, the Steelers, you can't get much better. And you could. You could win this, you could be in the Super Bowl and you could win it. So only 2 steps left. So keep all of that in mind. I believe each of these coaches, I've mentioned Knoll, I've mentioned Cowher, and I mentioned Tomlin, all different eras, all different rules. Knoll didn't have to deal with free agency. Cowher didn't have to deal with this just wussified pass interference, holding, hit the quarterback, flag football-esque era of football. Can you imagine you would not have Kevin Green or Greg Lloyd being as legendary as they are if that were the case? So just keep that in mind, folks. Would love to hear some feedback from you. Hope to have Terry back on for the WTF portion in the middle of the week because we've got some great stuff to talk about. There's going to be some NFL honors happening, and there's going to be the finalists for the Hall of Fame selected as well. So we're going to chat about that a little bit and have some fun. Until next time, be safe, be good, and I will catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.